500 people in that room. 1 award, 1 camera. She had already decided, weeks before walking through that door, that it was going to be hers. Not by hoping, not by working harder than everyone else. By feeling the exact moment her name would be called, until her nervous system stopped questioning it. This is the 3-step protocol she used. And what happened the second time she walked into a room with 500 people in it? She had been a photographer for 11 years. Not a hobbyist, a professional. She had built a business from it, a reputation, a body of work she was genuinely proud of. And she had entered 4 photography competitions in those 11 years. She had not won any of them. The losses were not catastrophic. They were the kind that don't make you cry, the kind that just sit with you, quietly on the drive home. She had filed each one away with the same internal language. Not yet. Keep going. Maybe next year. That language felt like patience. It felt like resilience. She would not understand until much later that it was also, in a very specific neurological sense, a ceiling. The 4th competition was in March. She had submitted what she considered her best work, a series of portraits taken in natural light in a small town in the mountains over 4 days. She had felt good about it. She had felt, for the first time, that she had a real chance. When the results came, she wasn't on the list. She drove home from the venue in the usual polite silence of someone who has decided not to make a scene of their disappointment. She pulled into the parking garage of her building. She turned off the engine. And she sat there for 45 minutes without moving. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was thinking, with the specific kind of clarity that arrives only when you run out of polite explanations, about a question she had never let herself ask directly. Am I doing something wrong, or is something in me telling me not to win? She reached into her camera bag and pulled out the journal she kept there. It was meant for location notes, shoot ideas, client feedback. She opened it to a blank page and wrote at the top, "What would it feel like if I actually won?" She stared at that sentence for a long time. Because she realized, sitting in that parking garage, in that specific silence, that she had never actually let herself answer it. What Helena discovered in the months that followed was not a mindset hack. It was not a morning routine. It was not positive thinking, or visualization boards, or any of the things that word, visualization, tends to bring to mind. What she built intuitively from a question in a parking garage was a protocol grounded in 3 distinct areas of neuroscience. Each one independently documented, each one replicated, each one, when combined, pointing toward the same mechanism. The mechanism is this. Your nervous system does not distinguish clearly between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. If that imagined experience is built with sufficient sensory specificity, repeated with sufficient consistency, and felt with the specific emotional texture that follows an event that has already happened, rather than one you are still hoping for. Helena had never read the research. She had never used the word schema, or premotor cortex, or reticular activating system. She had simply asked herself a question she had been too careful to ask for 11 years, and then spent 6 weeks answering it every single morning until she could not remember what it felt like to be uncertain. In this video, you will see exactly what she did. Step by step, in the specific order she did it, with the science that explains, after the fact, why it worked. And then, what happened when she walked into a room with 500 people. And then, what happened 6 months later, when the room held 1,000. Equals 3.5 seconds / greater than. The 4th competition was in March. She had submitted what she considered her best work, a series of portraits taken in natural light in a small town in the mountains over 4 days. She had felt good about it. She had felt, for the first time, that she had a real chance. When the results came, she wasn't on the list. She drove home from the venue in the usual polite silence of someone who has decided not to make a scene of their disappointment. She pulled into the parking garage of her building. She turned off the engine. And she sat there for 45 minutes without moving. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was thinking, with the specific kind of clarity that arrives only when you run out of polite explanations, about a question she had never let herself ask directly. Am I doing something wrong, or is something in me telling me not to win? She reached into her camera bag and pulled out the journal she kept there. It was meant for location notes, shoot ideas, client feedback. She opened it to a blank page and wrote at the top, "What would it feel like if I actually won?" She stared at that sentence for a long time. Because she realized, sitting in that parking garage, in that specific silence, that she had never actually let herself answer it. Every second of your waking life, your Your sensory system is receiving 11 million bits of information from your skin, your eyes, your ears, your proprioceptive system, your interoceptive system. The sum of every signal your body is sending and receiving at any given moment is 11 million bits per second. Your conscious mind receives 40 of them. 40 out of 11 million. The structure responsible for making that selection is a cluster of neurons in your brainstem, roughly cylindrical, less than 2 centimeters in diameter, called the reticular activating system, the RAS. Its job is to decide, moment to moment, what reaches your awareness. And it does not make that decision randomly. It makes it based on what you have already decided matters. You have had the experience of buying a car or thinking seriously about buying one, and then suddenly seeing that car everywhere, on every street, in every parking lot, in the background of every conversation. The cars were always there. The RAS simply had no instruction to surface them. Once it did, it started selecting them from the 11 million bits and routing them to your 40. Helena had spent 11 years with an RAS that had received somewhere deep in her operating system a particular instruction. Not a conscious one, not a sentence she had decided on deliberately. An inherited one. And because of that instruction, every time she entered a competition, her RAS was actively filtering out the signals that would have confirmed she could win, and actively surfacing the signals that confirmed the opposite. The judge's expressions she read as politely neutral. The way her body felt slightly apologetic when she submitted. The absence of the kind of certainty she noticed in other photographers, the ones who seemed to expect to win, who she had always attributed to arrogance. She would understand later that what she had been calling arrogance was something else entirely. Her grandfather had been a tailor. He had worked 6 days a week for 40 years and had built a decent, stable life. He was a man who believed that decent and stable were what responsible people aimed for. More than that was luck. And luck was not to be counted on. Luck is for other people was not a sentence he used dramatically. It was an orientation, a background assumption that shaped every decision, every ambition, every conversation about the future. His daughter, Helena's mother, grew up inside that assumption. She was talented. She had wanted, at 17, to study architecture. Her father had been gentle but clear. That was a path for people with connections, with capital, with luck. She should study something practical. She did. She became an accountant, married, raised Helena, and never mentioned architecture again, except once, when Helena was 9 and announced she wanted to be a photographer. Her mother had smiled and said, in the warmest possible voice, That's a beautiful dream, my love. Just make sure you have something to fall back on. Transgenerational psychology, sometimes called psychogenealogy, is the study of how beliefs, behavioral patterns, physiological responses, and emotional orientations pass through family systems across generations. Not through genetics. Through story. Through the expressions that cross a parent's face when a child reaches for something the family has never known. Through the sentences said and the ones deliberately left unsaid. Through the particular way love is sometimes expressed as warning. Just make sure you have something to fall back on is not a hostile sentence. It is a sentence spoken with love from inside a worldview in which reaching too far is how people get hurt. But Helena heard it at 9, and she heard it again at 11 and 13, and at every decision point where what she wanted exceeded what her family system had defined as safe. By the time she was 40, the sentence was no longer a sentence. It was a fact. Encoded in her RAS, embedded in her schema. Present in the apologetic way she submitted her work and the politely resigned way she drove home after every loss. The protocol she built in the months after that parking garage did not simply change her habits. It ended a 40-year inheritance. In one generation, Aaron Beck, working on cognitive therapy at the University of Pennsylvania in the 1970s, introduced the concept of the cognitive schema, the internal framework through which we interpret every new experience. A schema is not a conscious belief. It is something closer to a lens that has become invisible because you have been looking through it for so long. It shapes what we notice, what we expect, what we allow to be possible, and, critically, it responds not to intention, but to evidence. Helena's schema around achievement said, in effect, people like me get close. People like me do good work, but people like me don't win the big one. You cannot talk yourself out of a schema with positive thinking. You cannot override it with motivation. You replace it, and this is the key, by providing your nervous system with evidence that the schema is wrong. Mark Jeannerod's motor imagery research, published in Neuroimage in 2001, now cited more than 10,000 times, demonstrated that vividly imagining a physical action activates the premotor cortex, the supplementary motor area, and the cerebellum with measurable, documented overlap to the neural activity produced by the real action. The brain, under the right conditions, is rehearsing the outcome at a neural level. It is building the pathway, encoding the sequence, treating the imagined event as something that has, in a neurological sense, already occurred. Halpern and Zatorre completed the picture with a 1999 study at McGill University. They found that imagining a specific piece of music, hearing it in your mind with detail, activates the auditory cortex nearly identically to actually hearing the sound. The implications of this for Helena's protocol are specific. When she imagined hearing her name called, the specific voice, the specific amplification of a convention microphone, the specific way a name sounds when it is announced rather than spoken, her auditory cortex was processing it as a real event. Not metaphorically, neurologically. She was giving her nervous system evidence that this had happened, that this was something that happened to her. That luck, if you want to call it that, was not for other people. The morning after the parking garage, Helena woke at the same time she always did. She made coffee. She sat in the chair she used for client calls, the one by the window. And she opened the journal. She had not planned a protocol. She had not read anything the night before. She simply decided that she was going to answer the question she had written in the parking garage as seriously as she would answer a brief from a client. What would it feel like if I actually won? She started with the room. She had attended enough conventions to know what they looked like. The high ceilings, the branded banners, the particular way light travels in a large space filled with people and equipment. She built the room in her mind with the specificity of a location scout. Then the crowd. Not an abstract mass of people, specific faces. The two friends she was planning to bring. Where they would be standing. What they would be wearing. Then the moment. The host at the microphone. The pause before a name is spoken, the particular fraction of a second between the beginning of a word and the recognition that the word is your name. She built it until it had texture, until she could feel the floor under her shoes when she stood, until she could feel the weight of the camera. She imagined a specific model, one she had handled before, when it was placed in her hands. Until she could feel what her face did. Not the performance of being pleased, the actual, private, quiet feeling of a thing that has happened that you did not doubt, arriving exactly as you had known it would. The first morning, it took her 40 minutes to build the scene to that level of detail. The second morning, 35. By the third week, she could walk through the entire sequence in 8 minutes. It had become, as she would describe it, like remembering something. Somewhere in the fourth week, she cannot name the day, something changed. She noticed it as an absence rather than a presence. The wanting was gone. Not the desire, she still wanted to win, but the quality of the wanting had shifted from something that felt like reaching to something that felt like waiting. The difference between leaning toward a door that might open and standing quietly in front of a door that you know is going to open. She described it to a friend some time later as a kind of boredom with the question. She had simply stopped being interested in whether she would win, the way you stop being interested in whether the coffee you are making will be hot. Of course, it will be hot. You are making coffee. Beck's schema theory explains what had happened at a cognitive level. The old schema, I might win, but probably not, had been replaced by a new one, built on accumulated evidence. 6 weeks of mornings in which the nervous system had processed winning as something that had occurred. Not once, not occasionally, every single day in specific sensory detail, with the emotional signature of completion rather than anticipation. The nervous system does not respond to what you want. It responds to what it has already experienced. And by week 5, what it had experienced, neurologically, was winning. The convention was held in a hotel ballroom in the city center on a Thursday evening in late autumn. 500 registered photographers. A program of speakers, workshops, and, at the end of the evening, the annual awards. Helena arrived 90 minutes early. She had done something she had never done at a competition before. She had walked the room. Not to look at the work displayed on the walls, though she did that too, but to find the specific spot she had been standing in her mind every morning for 6 weeks, when her name was called. She found it. She stood there for a moment. The floor felt exactly the way she had imagined it. The distance from the stage was exactly what she had seen in her mind. She felt something she could not quite name. Not excitement, not relief, something closer to recognition. Yes, she thought, this is the room. The evening unfolded. Speakers, conversations, the particular kind of noise that builds in a room where many people who share a passion are all talking at once. Her 2 friends were there, standing where she had imagined them. When the awards portion of the evening was announced, Helena positioned herself. Her friend, standing slightly to her right, started to step forward to get a better angle. Helena touched her arm. Move aside. I need to be standing here when they call my name. Her friend stopped, looked at her. You're serious? Yes. 3 awards were announced before hers. She listened to each one with the particular calm of someone who is not waiting, but rather confirming a sequence they already know. When the host said her name, she was already positioned. She walked to the stage. The camera was placed in her hands. The wait was exactly what she had imagined. She stood at the microphone and said thank you, briefly, and meant it. But the primary thing she was aware of was not pride or surprise. It was the recognition of a thing that had already happened many times before. In a chair by a window. Every morning for 6 weeks. She was, as she described it to her friend afterward, the only person in the room who was not surprised. Six months later, she entered a second competition. Twice the room, twice the field. A national-level event with 1,000 photographers registered. She told her friend about the first time when she called to invite her. Her friend, the one she had asked to move aside, said, "I'll be there, and I'll stay to your left." Helena ran the protocol again. Same 3 steps, same morning practice, same sensory specificity. Except this time, she was building a scene in a room she had never visited, one she could only imagine from photographs on the event website. It was, she noticed, easier the second time. The schema had already been updated. The RAS already had its new instruction. She was not replacing, "I might not win," this time. She was deepening, "I know how this goes." The night before the event, her friend called. "Are you nervous?" Helena thought about it honestly. "No, not at all. I already know how it ends." When they called her name in that 1,000-person room, the sound was different. The acoustics were larger. The applause came from further away. She walked to the stage the same way she had walked 6 months earlier. Steady. Unhurried. Not performing composure, simply not requiring it. Because she had done this many times over. In a chair by a window. Every morning. For 6 more weeks. The protocol has 3 steps. They require no special equipment, no prior experience, and no particular talent. They require consistency more than anything else. The same quality that makes physical training work, applied to the nervous system rather than the body. Step 1. Audição antecipada, anticipated hearing. You begin with sound. Not a visualization in the visual sense, not a mental image, not a movie playing inside your head. You begin with the specific sound of your outcome arriving. The specific voice that will announce it. The specific acoustics of the space where it will happen. The particular way your name sounds through a microphone, through speakers, in a large room. If your outcome is different, a conversation, an offer, a message, you build the specific sound of that, the tone of voice, the specific words. You do not imagine hearing it, you hear it. You construct the auditory experience with the same deliberateness you would use to tune an instrument. Halpern and Zattore's research demonstrated that this is not a metaphor. Imagined sound, built with specificity, activates your auditory cortex as a real event. Your nervous system begins logging it as something that has happened. Hold the sound until it is familiar. Until hearing your name called in that space feels like recalling a memory rather than constructing a wish. You are not watching yourself from outside. You are there. You feel the floor under your specific shoes, the temperature of the room. Conventions are always slightly warmer than they should be because of the people and the lighting, the particular way your clothes sit on your body when you stand up in front of people. The faces. Not a generic crowd, the specific people you care most about having present, where they are standing, what their expression looks like at the moment your name is called. The object. Whatever the outcome involves you holding or receiving or signing, its specific weight, its specific texture. You build this in first person, with the body, with proprioception. You are not imagining an event, you are occupying one. Your premotor cortex, per Jeannerod's decade of replicated findings, is activating the same networks it would activate if this were happening in physical reality. The pathway is being built. The sequence is being encoded. The body is learning at a cellular level that this is something it has done. This is the step that most people miss. They feel excitement, anticipation, the emotion of wanting something. That is not the emotion you are looking for. The emotion you are looking for is quieter. It is the specific emotional texture that arrives after a thing has already happened, not the peak, the aftermath. The particular satisfaction of having been right about something you were not certain of. The specific kind of relief that doesn't feel like relief because it is too calm. The way you feel walking out of a room where something finished, knowing it is done. That emotion, not excitement, not hope, is the signal that updates the schema. Beck's framework is precise about this. Schemas update in response to emotional evidence, not intellectual argument. The emotion of anticipation keeps the schema in waiting mode. The emotion of completion moves it to certainty. Run all 3 steps in that order for a minimum of 6 weeks. Every day. Not most days. Every day. The same scene, the same sensory detail, the same emotional sequence. Not until you believe it. Until you stop questioning it. Helena still competes. She does not win every time. That is not what changed. What changed is her relationship to the space between intention and outcome, The space that had, for 40 years, felt like a corridor she was not supposed to walk down without an invitation. It no longer feels like a corridor. It feels like a waiting room, a place you sit in briefly, without doubt about whether your name will be called before it is called. Her grandfather believed that luck was for other people. He passed that belief, with love, to his daughter. She passed it with love to Helena. None of them chose to carry it. None of them intended to pass it. It was simply what the family knew. Helena changed what the family knows. Not by rejecting her grandfather, not by criticizing her mother, but by sitting in a parking garage for 45 minutes and deciding that the inherited belief was a data point rather than a fact, and then doing the work every morning for 6 weeks to replace it with something her nervous system could process as evidence. The inheritance ended. In one room. In one parking garage. In one chair by one window. 40 minutes a morning. For 6 weeks. If you're going to run this protocol, start with one scene. One specific outcome. The most specific version of it you can construct. Not success, not winning, not even getting the thing I want. The room, the sound, the weight of what you are holding afterward, the faces of the people who matter, the emotion of a thing that is done. Run it tomorrow morning. Not for 20 minutes, not with music or candles or any particular ritual. In a chair, with a cup of coffee, for as long as it takes to feel the scene rather than think it. Then run it the next morning. And the next. Not until you believe it. Until you stop questioning it. If this channel has been useful to you, subscribe. It costs you nothing and it tells the platform that this kind of story deserves to reach more people. And share this with one person you know who is sitting in their own parking garage right now, trying to figure out what they are doing wrong. Sometimes the answer is not what they are doing. It is what they inherited. The next video in this series is about a man who spent 11 years building the wrong thing, not because he wasn't capable, because the financial ceiling he kept hitting wasn't his. It had been built by someone else, long before he was born. And what happened when he finally understood that?